Right on. Thank you so much, Glenn. My name is Hiro, and I am an alcoholic. I'm really grateful to be here, grateful to be sober. It's morning here, but good afternoon for the folks that are on the East Coast. And what a delight to be here. It's so important for me to let you know that I'm purely an alcoholic. I'm not an expert on Alcoholics Anonymous, um, and I'm not a paid speaker for AA. It's confusing sometimes for new folks because you've got a bald Asian in a suit, and that's the bald Asian. I can't help that part, but the suit part, that's something that my home group does at birthdays and whenever we're asked to speak or have a commitment in a home group. And the only expert on authority on Alcoholics Anonymous is the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I just love this program. And I have a sobriety date. It's November 12th, 2007. It's the only one I have so far. I hope to keep it. And I think the fact that I haven't experienced relapse in sobriety is a mixture of a few things. The first is all the things at the beginning of chapter 3 to like go out and try this and try that. I had tried everything before coming into Alcoholics Anonymous. I had thousands upon thousands of hours of psychotherapy, group psychotherapy, individual psychotherapy, and with all these different kinds, cognitive behavioral, hypnotherapy, Gestalt psychotherapy, systems therapy, all this stuff. I had tried going to temple. I had tried fasting. I had tried going on a macrobiotic diet, which is all cooked. I had tried going all raw, which is a lot of work. It's a lot of sprouting, a lot of cutting, a lot of chopping, a lot of cleaning. I had tried working out for marathons and half marathons. I'd even had like a short and perhaps ill-advised stint with some radical Marxism, and nothing would actually. They all helped in various areas of my life, but nothing really helped me to live and stay sober and feel free and to thrive, and nothing helped me to prevent myself from having that first drink. The first group that I went into, my sobriety date is November 12th, 2007. And the first group I belonged to was this place called the Round Table. And they would do this bewildering thing that I haven't really seen happen in any other group. Every time someone would get up to the podium, they would do their share, and then they would look at this little, like, I don't know, 1950s era calendar with little blocks on it, like where you change the numbers, and you have the month on the bottom. And they would look over at that. They would appear to do some mental calculations, and then they would say their time backwards, which was just bewildering to me. So my time, roundtable style, is I haven't had a drink or a drug in 9 days, 8 months, and 13 years, one day at a time. Now, I was completely bewildered by this behavior. And so fairly early on, I don't know, in my first couple of weeks, when I really started, paying attention to the beginning of people's shares, like their name, and I asked my sponsor, why is it that people appear to do arithmetic from the podium? And he says, buddy, I don't know about why they do it, but for me, it's because days are more important than years. And as soon as I start thinking that my years are more important than my days, that's a time when that's a good signal. That's a good sign that I might lose my days. And I'm so grateful for that. I have a sponsor. His name is Bob D. He knows that he sponsors me today, and he lives in Las Vegas. I've got a home group. It's the Bellflower Big Book group, and we just recently went back to hybrid meetings. And I'm happy to report to you that so far to date, I have been to 6 meetings where I was required to wear pants. So I'm super happy to do that. Stephen, 181 days, Michelle, 10 months. Congratulations. What a beautiful thing. What a beautiful, Wilson talked about AA being like spiritual kindergarten. And just so you know, you're not hearing from a spiritual giant. I mean, Stephen before in the fellowship was talking about how, their baby woke up in the middle of the night, like sick. And man, I was sick yesterday, crying and screaming. All I remember is getting off the phone with a sponsee, and for some reason they weren't listening to me, and this was somehow just really dysregulating me. And I'm like, I don't think I'm right, because sometimes I'll wake up in the midst of trying to control people's lives and run the universe and just realize I don't think I'm right. And I come downstairs and my wife looks at my face. She's like, "You're all right?" And I'm like, "I don't know." She says, "I think you need food. I think you forgot to eat." I'm like, "That might be." So she feeds me, and after I eat, like she heated up some soup for us, and I had my food, and I'm just sitting there at the table like this, and she's like, "Maybe you need to lie down," and I did. I was just, it was almost like I was having one of those like I would take my little nephew to the to Disneyland or something, right? At the end of the day, the kid's having an amazing day, but then at the end of the day, the parents notice, well, it's probably about time to go home, and then all of a sudden he's like, "I want to go on the and he just has a full-blown breakdown, and then Duran is crying, like falls over and like scratches his knee, and his knee's bleeding a little bit. He's like, my knee, and mom's all, let me get you a Band-Aid, honey. He's like, I don't want a Band-Aid. And that's kind of the state I was in. So I go upstairs, and I not that I was screaming, but inside I was, and just so out of sorts, and I take a nap. And because I had no access to, like, well, first of all, my rational mind, nor to God, and I'm completely disconnected from everything. And after I just pass out, from, it wasn't that long of a nap, maybe like 25 minutes, but I was just so gone. And I come to, and I'm like, oh my God, who was that guy? And I hate it when I don't know, hypoglycemia, exhaustion, my character defects drive me. And it turns out that when I'm driven by my character defects, it's kind of like when I'm driven by my thirst, or I'm driven by my unmanageability. Anytime I'm driven by something, I have no power, choice, or control. And it still happens today. And I'm so grateful that today I have the choice of the one thing I do have a choice about is whether when I come to in a brief window, sometimes a longer window, but sometimes it's just a really brief window. Do I turn back and face Alcoholics Anonymous? Do I turn back and face all of you? Do I hit my knees? Do I get on the phone? Do I call somebody in AA? If I haven't done a morning 11 step, like consider my plans for the day and do all that to start my day over, sometimes over and over and over. And then the reading from today, oh, it's so good. From the 12 and 12, when I had to turn to that page, to 74, and I love that, that by step 7, we enjoy moments in which there is something like real peace of mind. And the next sentence that was read was so interesting. To those of us who have hitherto known only excitement. And Wilson does this over and over again, doesn't he? Where he talks about excitement as if it's a bad thing. And I love excitement. And one of the things I love about excitement is it's exciting, and it feels so good. And the problem, though, with excitement, if that's all I'm pursuing, is that sometime all my resources are going to crumble. I'm going to have my little temper tantrum at age 56, like last night, like I did last night, just fall apart and have to take a nap. So anyway, that was a really long introduction. Glenn, thank you so much for asking me to come and share. My job is to share with you in a general way what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm like today. And I've been thinking a lot about that. Boy, I've been thinking a lot about that. One thing is that a buddy of mine is like I dropped out of 2 PhD programs in my drinking, and so I at that time I didn't identify as an alcoholic. So like I can't be an alcoholic if I'm able to go to grad school. So and one of the guys who graduated from that second one, he got his PhD in English literature. So did my wife. I met her there, and met her in 91, got together in 92, got married in 95. I got sober in 2007. So you can do the misery math. One of the guys who graduated a little bit before her, she graduated in 98. He since then has become the webmaster for the Shoah Foundation. I don't know if you know what the Shoah Foundation is. It's housed by USC, which is where we graduate, or where they graduated from, and I graduated from later in another PhD program. But thanks to AA, I never would have been able to do that otherwise. The Shoah Foundation was created by Steven Spielberg to capture stories of the Holocaust. And the thesis of capturing the stories of the Holocaust and the thesis of the Shoah Foundation is we tell what happened, what we were like, what happened, and what we're like today, and how we survived our experience. So that never again, let's never allow this to happen again. And it occurs to me that Alcoholics Anonymous is exactly like that. We tell, except for us, it's not the tragedy of authoritarianism. It's not the tragedy of totalitarianism. Well, it kind of is. It's the tragedy of the totalitarianism of my own ego. It's the tragedy of the authoritarianism of my alcoholism, of the things that I'm driven to do. When I'm thirsty, or when I'm kept away from a drink, and that's just so very remarkable. And I'm going to start currently and then go backwards, because this has been such a strange time for AA. This is a time when Wilson could never have predicted this level of connectivity, where we have people on different continents on this Zoom. And one of the most bewildering things, of course, is that we've had this global pandemic. And what that means is that we've had increasing disunity in every community and all around the world for various reasons. And the most bewildering thing about Alcoholics Anonymous, if you're new to AA, let me tell you, one of the most powerful things about AA, of course, is getting and staying sober and having a good life without alcohol, despite the fact that we live with our own minds. But second is that the greater the disunity in the world, my experience and the experience of AA history is that the greater the unity in Alcoholics Anonymous. The greater the disunity in the world, the greater the unity in AA. And why? When there's disunity, it makes me thirsty. When I get thirsty, my life falls apart to match the outside, and then I need a solution. And I love that in here we can have all sorts of varying political opinions, religious opinions, opinions about each other. But the bottom line is we learn to come in here and treat each other well. Why? Otherwise we die. And I'm so grateful that AA is here for me to live. I was made in Japan by two non-alcoholic Japanese people, and I was brought to this continent, to North America, against my will. Well, I didn't have a will. Well, I probably had a will. My mom would, Stephen will tell you, let you know, infants that have wills, but I just don't remember that will, and I probably couldn't articulate it very well in sentences. But before the age of 1, my parents brought me to Canada, where my father was completing a PhD program. He was studying organic chemistry, and we lived on his little graduate stipend of 3,000 Canadian dollars a year. And my memory started coming online right around the time he graduated, and then he moved. We all moved to Tucson, Arizona, where he was doing his first postdoc. And this is where my memories really start coming online, and I start realizing, and in retrospect, I start realizing some stuff. Things like, man, I'm really good at feeling bad. And the fact that, you know, that well, I'm literally an immigrant. My brother and sister are children of immigrants, but the fact, my immigrant status, my ethnic identity, like, these things have nothing to do with the specifics of my alcoholism in terms of what makes me an alcoholic. However, they really helped me to be thirsty, because I felt different, and I didn't want to be different. And by the time we were in Arizona, I realized, okay, I can't do anything about the race, but I could do something about, like, the linguistic difference. And at that time, I still had an accent, and I was really wanting to get rid of my accent, and I succeeded. And by the time you know, I'm ready for first grade, I succeeded at blending in linguistically. Next thing I know, my parents decide my father gets another postdoc. He switches from organic chemistry to polymer chemistry, which I understand, like, for I'm not a chemist, but I understand, like in the world of medicine, it's kind of like being an ear, nose, throat doctor and just suddenly deciding, well, you know, I'm going to be a gynecologist. But anyway, so we moved to Tucson, Alabama in 1971, y'all. And so all of a sudden, like, I had finally, like, mastered the, like, linguistically could blend in. I could, if you had a recording of me and other kids, I would have sounded the same. But all of a sudden we get to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And I don't know if you don't know Alabama, like in Tuscaloosa, the word hi has 3 syllables, you know, like hi. And I don't sound like people anymore, and I have to learn how to, like, blend in linguistically. And I did not know going into first grade that that at the age of 42, I'd be required to surrender to a program called Alcoholics Anonymous. Now I know that there might be some some big book scholars, some big book lawyers in the room who might say, you know, the Hiro, the word surrender isn't in the first 164 pages of the doctor's opinion, or and you're absolutely right, it's not. But the word concede is. The first step is I had to concede to my innermost self, and a concession is an allowing in, is a ceding to, is a complete acceptance of, and so it's, to me, in my mind, it's synonymous with surrender. Also abandonment. And what's so bewildering is that like at the tail end of the big book, 164 pages, it says right there that, you know, it urges us once again to abandon ourselves to God as we understand God. And I have felt abandoned in the past, and I've met a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous who felt abandoned, and abandonment just doesn't feel good. And so why would we want to abandon? But this is, and like, why would I want to abandon me? And it turns out that I don't want to abandon me until I can't get rid of me. And it turns out that that I was to get to a place where I want to get rid of me really, really quickly, really soon. And what I mean by that is I'm so good at feeling bad that it's almost like I'm walking around and my head's telling me all the time, Hiro, you suck more than anyone's ever sucked before. And then the people around me help me to feel this way. Like I told you, I didn't know I was going to have to surrender at age 42, but in first grade, I'm walking up to the cool kids and they're you know, at the corner after school, and they're like, oh, here comes Hiro, let's play the war, you play the Japs. And I'll be like, oh, really? And then I was like, oh, well, okay, because I want to fit in. And it felt icky, but it also felt good because I wanted to fit in and they were including me. And oh my goodness. Well, right. Carry on. That was distracting. The Zoom bombers, that was distracting for me, so I have to go with this. The most bewildering thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is that we're so adaptive to changing situations, right? And the first time I heard about Zoom bombing, like my last meeting live in person before COVID was March 12th of 2020, our Thursday night meeting. That Friday was the last day that I saw patients live, like in person. And then after that, it's all been on Zoom. And then once we went on Zoom, that following Monday, I helped my sponsees like create a Zoom meeting of our own, and I helped that week. I helped a whole bunch of groups go on to Zoom. By that Wednesday, we started hearing about Zoom bombing. The first time I heard about it was an invasion into a class at USC. And wasn't it amazing how we just adopted all of these kind of we've got it's just like an in-person AA meeting, except we've got people that like look for the folks that are disruptive and to guide them outside. And hey, we can help y'all. And I felt like I don't know, I felt a little bit left out because I hadn't been Zoom bombed for the entire year. And I was speaking one day and someone comes on and they just start cursing up a storm, as opposed to a little picture. And this delighted me to no end. I mean, the group was really efficient. They put them away. And I'm like, why is it that folks think that if they come to an AA meeting, it's going to disturb us so much? I know that some folks have been disturbed, but for so many of it, it's like, you know, someone comes into our meeting and they're drunk and psychotic, which is a state I've been in, and they're causing a ruckus. And what happens? Y'all just love us. Y'all just escort us outside so we can do our crazy outside and give us hope. And and it's so funny because like Zoom bombing still happens now, even though, well, I suppose it's summer now. But I just think it's that 12-year-old mentality that I had well into my 40s, where we're just like, let me go stir up some trouble. Let me go have some fun. And I love how Alcoholics Anonymous, we just come right back together. And if I hadn't been talking about that little picture, then we wouldn't, it wouldn't even be a thing. And so coming back, I had no idea. I would find the words later that those kids, they were probably just doing what kids do. But I didn't have words for the discomfort it caused in me. I didn't have the labels like that wouldn't come out till the 80s, like microaggression, or even talking about bullying, or possibly even racism. Um, and not so that you feel bad for me. It's interesting because child psychologists are really fascinated with children like me. First of all, they're fascinated by the effects of bullying on kids, and this is still, of course, going on so much right now with cyberbullying. But they're fascinated by kids like me who know exactly what it feels like. I imagine everyone in this room knows exactly what it feels like to be to experience prejudice, to be kind of marginalized, put down for one reason or another, for some reason that you can't possibly help, because of your personhood, or somebody else's like stereotype of your personhood, and you know how horrible it feels. And what most people do, they realize how horrible it feels, and that sends them into a state of kindness and caring for those who become victimized. Not me. What happens for a kid like me is that I become a bully. And so I'm one of the small percentage of kids that are bullied that then become a bully. And and that creates a really interesting psychology for a kid like me, because now not only am I trying to make myself feel good in the short run by bullying others so that I don't get bullied, in the long run I feel horrible. I feel smaller than I believe I have possibly made those people feel, because I know exactly what it's like to be on the other side, and I need to escape that part of myself. And not that I got really big and burly and I got physical. It's just that I'm a really good observer of human behavior. I'm good with words, and I would discover what your weakness is. And then if you became threatening to me, I would expose it publicly and just like, like stab the knife of words into you. And my experience is in some ways being hit by shaming words that go directly to my greatest weaknesses is somehow even more painful than physical assault. It lasts a lot longer, doesn't it? Anyhow, so I became really thirsty by the age of 12, and a buddy of mine after school. We're in the science fiction book club because that's how cool I am. That's how I roll. This is 1977, y'all. We'd moved to California by this time, and in California, I realized, oh my God, there's all these other Asians who live here, and it turns out if you're an Asian American like me that isn't raised around other Asian Americans, and suddenly you move to a place where there's other Asian Americans, those Asian Americans have a name for an Asian American like me. They're calling me things like Twinkie and banana, yellow on the outside, white on the inside. I'm like, oh my God, I don't fit in with anyone, even if they look like me. And so this is third grade. By the time I'm in seventh grade, I'm thirsty. I'm covered in me. I can't get rid of me. Everything is just, that space of just like, I'm rubbing up against me, and not in a good way. It's just icky. And a buddy of mine after school, he diagnoses me. He's like, I think I think I know what's wrong with you. I think you're anxious. I'm like, I'm anxious all the time. And he says to me, you know what? Hey, meet me on the north side of campus tomorrow morning on the other side of that bamboo field. I'll get you some of what you need. And so I'm intrigued. Now, let me tell you about my buddy Dave, the man who carried the message of hope to me. He's 12 years old. He's left puberty far behind. He's already 6'4". He's got that Allman Brothers hair parted in the middle down to his ass, that long blonde straight hair. He's got those piercing blue wizard eyes, and he's a man with a solution. And so I didn't know that in 30 years I would be coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, but I'm treating that meeting like an AA meeting. There's only two of us, but I'm there as the greeter. I'm like 20 minutes early for like our 7 a.m. meeting. And he shows up and he shows me how to drink these tall boys real fast and smoke these funny green cigarettes real slow. And my idea of a good time before this was doing things like, I don't know, memorizing pi for another 10 digits, or sneaking out on a Friday night with my Spock ears to go to the Star Trek convention. And all of a sudden, I can't stop laughing, and I'm having a hard time walking. I'm going, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. Except, of course, I hadn't quite hit puberty yet, so it was probably more like, oh my God. And I was so excited, y'all. I was so excited to like go to algebra. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be so fun. Little did I know that my algebra skills would decline the more I pursued alcohol. And I instantly became an evangelist for King Alcohol and his little buddies. And the thing about being 12, a prepubescent 12-year-old, it's hard to get alcohol, especially in a household like mine where there's not really much liquor in the household. And but alcohol has this magical quality. I don't even have to have it in me in order to have a spiritual experience, in order to be relieved of me. It could be Monday, and I could be looking at a long stretch of days. But on Friday, my buddy Marshall, his older brother, is going to be throwing a block party because their parents are out of town. And I know that on Friday, for just $1 in 1977, I'll be able to get one of those red plastic cups and be able to fill it up as much as I want. I'll have my solution on Friday, and so on Monday it's like, oh, you know what? I can deal with a PE class and coach mispronouncing my last name. My last name's Sasaki, and he's all, hey Sasuke, get down and give me 20. And I'll be like, oh, and I can barely, get my little get to 5, and I'm like, oh, and then people are laughing, and it's fine. Puberty was going to come. I'd be able to do that later, but I didn't know that then. All I knew is I was going to get to have my drink on Friday, and it'd be okay. People started worrying about my drinking because by the time I'm 14 or so, I'm wanting to get you to experience what I used to experience as opposed to what I'm currently experiencing. By the time I'm 15, people are starting to worry about my drinking. They're saying to me, maybe you need to go to AA. Those folks there know how to stay sober, and I didn't feel like I needed AA. In fact, I found people who can drink more than me, so I could feel completely comfortable about my drinking. And at age 16, my parents were good, loving, hardworking immigrant people. But at age 16, I was at the jumping off place. I didn't know that's what it was called. But I was basically looking at being, and being sucked. And I was looking at non-being, and non-being looked really inviting. And I didn't write a note. I was so angry in my teens. I was so angry. In retrospect, I don't really know what I was angry about. I was angry about things that were really unfair of me. I was angry at reality. I was angry at being Asian. I was angry at being a teenager. I was angry at not having autonomy. I was angry at the fact that my parents are so freaking weird, not knowing that they're just being Japanese. I was angry at I was angry at the fact that I was angry because I had no idea that that there are subtitles that are all about love and connection that I don't even know exist. That, for instance, I'm so angry that my buddy can get 4 B's and 2 A's, and he'll get $1 for each of his A's, and I'll get 5 A's and 1 B, and my parents will be going, what happened here? And I had no idea that there were subtitles underneath, subtitles that said, the only way we know to have you succeed is by excelling educationally. We love you, son. We want a better life for you than we could possibly have. And we want you never to suffer the way we had to suffer. I had no idea about those things. In fact, given what I know about child development, many of you, I know Steven's got a kid. I know many of you have kids, and maybe many of you have kids that are grown, and maybe you've succeeded with your kids the way that my parents succeeded with me. They succeeded in providing me an opportunity to never suffer the way they suffered. They provide me an opportunity to not have to struggle for the things they struggled for. And the evidence of their success, they ended up with a completely entitled kid, someone who has no idea how much they struggled and has just like, gimme. Of course this is mine. Give it to me. Stuff that they struggled for, they protected me from that struggle, and therefore I just thought I deserve it. And then I'm like, I don't deserve them to talk to me this way. And I was so upset. And of course, I can't tell the truth from the false, like the big book tells us. And I'm at this point where I feel like no one loves me. I couldn't see it. And I'm the eldest son. I've got 2 younger siblings. And if you know anything about Japanese culture, that's a lot of pressure on a kid like me. And I was feeling it. And I was so angry. I wrote no note. I was ready to go. I had a handful of Librium and a bottle of Bacardi 151 and a handful of Valium. And apparently 151 is no longer available in the state of California. And if it's not available in your state and you've never had Bacardi 151, that is a tragedy, because it is 75.5% alcohol. It gets you downtown really fast. It's so good. But I had figured this out biochemically. Once this crossed my blood-brain barrier, I knew that this would stop my brain, stop my heart. I would die. I forgot I was a puker. And so I know what it feels like to have my face like on that shag carpet and that lake of half dissolved pills and vomit. And you think that would send a kid like me into Alcoholics Anonymous? No, I just taken it too far. So let me just summarize the next few decades and a half. And so basically, I haven't had many of the consequences of alcoholism that I know so many people in AA have had. And I like to think of it, my sponsor likes to remind me that I haven't had them yet. So, knock wood. And For instance, I've never had a drunk driving offense. I've driven drunk many a time, but I've never been caught. I've never been to prison. I've never been arrested. I've never been hospitalized against my will. I've never lost a job because of alcohol, but my first fifth step showed me that I lost many because of alcoholism. In fact, I thought that my problem was that I'm a chronic depressive. And I also thought that my problem was that I experience a lot of anxiety. And I also thought my problem was, I have difficulty completing things. To give you an example, I graduated from that high school, but it took me 7 years to graduate from a 4-year college. And then after that, I get into a PhD program in English literature, top 25 program in the Midwest. Halfway through, I believe I have seasonal affective disorder, which I might have had, and I definitely have a graduate student writer's block. But I don't know that it's untreated alcoholism. I just thought that alcohol was something that warms my spirits, and I transfer the credits I have to the other big university in town, the one across the rival to the other one, and end up getting into transferring my credits and getting a free ride. And I get a free ride because I've got a job at that school. I'm teaching freshmen how to write, but I brought me with me, and I experienced that double life once again, but this time publicly, where I can't write, but I'm teaching kids how to write. And I meet my wife there, and I drop out of that program, just not knowing. And the thing is that I experience recovery after I slow down, and because I'm a periodic until I'm not. I'm a binge drinker until I need it every day. And so, and I've always been really good at stopping on my own. I don't like to do it, but I like having done it. And sometimes it'll be to train for a half marathon. Sometimes it'll be to just try and regain some control over my life. And this works over and over and over. Fast forward to the spring of 2007. I'm on the 5th floor of a major hospital in Los Angeles. I am doing the F word mantra in the men's room at the mirror because I don't recognize a person in the mirror. I can't stand them. And I am going, F, 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 because I'm trying to not be actively psychotic. In my case, being actively psychotic translates into seeing things that you don't see and hearing things that you don't hear, and also being actively delusional. The first page of chapter 3 talks about delusions and alcoholism, and the medical definition of a delusion is a fixed, in other words, unchangeable false belief that I believe that everyone else can tell if they knew that I had this belief, that there's all these reasons that's completely untrue. And the problem with a delusion is that it is completely resistant to ample evidence and reasoned argument. And in fact, if you've ever dealt with someone who's in the grips of a delusion, sometimes what a delusion will do is it'll incorporate the person who's trying to be helpful into the delusion, like, oh, you're one of them. That was me. And I had no idea who they were, but they were after me and I needed to get away from them. And the reason I was trying really hard not to be psychotic. Oh, and by the way, if you've been psychotic before, like I was, you know exactly that my struggle at the moment, because trying really, really hard not to be psychotic doesn't work. So I'm trying not to be psychotic so that I can leave that bathroom and go provide psychotherapy to a 7-year-old. Because by this point, I'd beaten the writer's block. By this point, until it came back. By this point, I'd beaten my dropping out problem until it came back. And this time it was interrupted by my graduate program was just interrupted by this episode of psychosis. And I go to my bosses in that hospital and I start to tell them what's going on. And before I can even get just a few sentences into the paragraph that was all my symptoms, things like I'm panic attacks at work and not sleeping very well at night and maybe sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night. And this happened only maybe about 3 nights a week. And this has been going on for over 4 months. And maybe I have that sleep deprivation psychosis. And they're like, Hiro, go down the hall, go to HR, go have them connect you with the employee assistance program. Please do not talk to any of your patients. We will contact them. We will take care of them. And please go get help. Come back when you're better. Please bring a note. And for the very last time, on my own power with the assistance of a doctor, I go down to baseline. I do what psychiatrists call taking a drug holiday. I go down to nothing to find out who I am with nothing on board. And it turns out that who I am with nothing on board after the suffering there's room in my life for excitement. There's room in my life. It's like, oh, this is great, until of course it's not. And I come back full of excitement with my doctor's note, clearing me for work. And I'm thinking, all I have to do is not drink. All I have to do is not pick up. All I have to do is just and if I do that, I can finish this last handful of pre-doctoral internship hours. If I can, I can finish this dissertation based on the experiment I had done the previous year. Because I had done all my coursework, I was just at that very tail end. It turned out on like day 12 of my sobriety, I only had 9 pages left written in that dissertation, that really long paper. It was analysis, so there was a lot of work in there, but it wasn't the impossibility that I thought it was months earlier, and there weren't that many hours left. But then what happens is that someone invites me to a wine tasting. Now, the thing that kept me out of Alcoholics Anonymous, other than the fact that not identify as an alcoholic, was the element of what made me not identify as an alcoholic. And what made me not identify as an alcoholic was this idea that I have no choice over whether I take the first drink. And the language of that is so unique to Alcoholics Anonymous. And the way it's best described to me in Bill's story, but also in the case studies in chapter 3, more about alcoholism. Because I am exactly like Fred, the very last case study. There's not a cloud in the sky. I got this thing down. I'm gonna beat this thing. I'm gonna finish this PhD. I'm gonna, and then after that, I'll collect my hours. I'll get licensed. It'll be amazing. And someone invites me to a wine tasting, and I forget the psychosis. I forget the thought process that was like, maybe I need to die and I know how to do it right this time. I forget all of that stuff. And I think, wine tasting, that's civilized. You go get those little tasters from light to dark, and for a few dollars, you get a really nice buzz on. If you go to a quality wine tasting, you get a really good buzz on with no hangover. And if that's all you drink. And I'm thinking, that's all I'm going to drink. And I go in to do this experiment, and I had no idea that I was trying to prove that I'm not an alcoholic, because I wouldn't hear about that until AA, and didn't know that only alcoholics try to do that. And I'm thinking, you know what? Wine tastings, alcoholics, they don't go to wine tastings, right? They have to get downtown really fast, and I'm not going to drink anymore, because if I were really an alcoholic, I'd have to buy a few bottles and drink them that night. But no, I'm going to buy a case of wine of all sorts of different kinds that I'm going to cellar for a couple of years until they're perfect, and because alcoholics, they don't cellar their wine, right? They have to drink it. And I'm going to take this one bottle that's ready now, this lusty red, and I'm not even going to open it tonight. I'm going to wait 1 week. This is a Wednesday. I'm going to wait till the following Wednesday, and I'm going to cook up a bacon wrap filet, medium rare, grilled asparagus, balsamic drizzle. I'm going to pair it perfectly with this red one. I'm going to open the bottle. I'm going to let it breathe, because alcoholics, they don't let their wine breathe, right? And I'm going to pour myself a glass of wine to go along with this. And then afterwards, I'm going to cork the bottle, because alcoholics, they don't do that. And then the next night, I'll reopen the bottle and I'll pair it with another meal, and it'll be phenomenal. And it was, except within 30 days. My wife is confronting me with those dead glass taxidermy eyes that are somehow dead and also somehow terrified. And she's like, "Who are you? What have you done with my husband? Give me that debit card, that Visa card, that Amex. Give me all your damn cards. We might be done." And I was terrified, because I believed her, and I make an SOS phone call. And I call the only person I know who can possibly help me. I knew all of these folks in Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew so many people in AA who were happy, joyous, and free in Alcoholics Anonymous. I did not call them because I was not yet an alcoholic. I'm calling the only person I feel like I can trust. And I'm calling because I need a referral. I don't trust my shrink anymore. And I'm on the phone going, "I don't trust my shrink. I think I need a new shrink. I think I'm bipolar. I think I need some lithium." And she asked me, she's never seen me in this state before. And she asked me, "Hiro, what's going on?" Which is a reasonable question. And this is the first time that there was no fight, that I now recognize as a surrender or a complete concession of just to the moment. And I just said, I burned for 20, 25 minutes. I just told her everything. I told her all the crap I was pouring into my body, not to get drunk or high, but try to just get right. But I go past right to puking, because I've got that natural born antabuse in my body, and I'm just throwing up, and my head hasn't turned off. It's telling me how much I suck. And I can't get right. I can't get right. And I'm telling her all the skeezy acting out I'm doing. And she says to me at the end of that, she says, "Hiro, I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been sober for 22 years. Maybe you need a meeting." And this thing happens that I describe as like a branch 2 inches below my belly button that just goes pop, and I just start sobbing like I'm doing. It's like I'm doing involuntary stomach crunches. My entire body is going like convulsing, going yucca yucca yucca, like snot pouring out the nose, kind of full body release, crying. And I'm crying like this because I don't know what the hell just happened. I I I don't know. One who taught me how to send you to AA. She's the one who taught me to say things to you like, um, you might not drink right. You might need this place called Alcoholics Anonymous. They can help you stay sober there. I can't help you with that. She taught me to tell you things like, hey, if you don't identify as an alcoholic, don't worry about it. Here's a LA meeting directory. See the meetings that have a C next? Those are closed. Those are for alcoholics only. You can avoid those. Go any of the other ones. They're open. Anyone can go. They'll be happy to have you. She told me to tell you, if you go there to listen, to identify, not compare. Go listen for similarities, not differences. She told me to tell you, if you don't believe in God, if you have trouble with God, don't worry about that. If you hear about God in your meeting, because you might. Because that's advanced Alcoholics Anonymous. That's a later step, 2 and 3, and but you didn't have me tell you that stuff, and so I knew what to do. I was also sobbing because I was deathly afraid, because I knew exactly what one day at a time meant. One day at a time meant forever, and I didn't know how that was going to work. And but the next day I come into AA, and I hear a person who's socioeconomically nothing like me from the podium, and but he's talking about being stone cold sober with a gun in his mouth, wanting to die. And I know he knows what it feels like to be me. I know what he knows what it feels like to live inside my head. And then he said these really bewildering words. He says, as a result of having a home group, a sponsor, taking these 12 steps and taking other guys through the steps and having commitments in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm happy, joyous, and free most days. And I wouldn't have believed it if I had just read the transcript or the closed captioning for the hearing impaired. But I saw his eyes. It had the same twinkle that my buddy Dave had back when I was 12. He was a man who knew exactly how I felt and knew exactly the cure for that feeling, for that state of being. And I started following that man around and going to and doing what he said. Go to a meeting every day. Call me every day. Try not to drink in between. If that's too hard, go to more meetings and go make more phone calls. And we started sitting down at his kitchen table and going through the big book, one line at a time. Every time it told us to pray something, we prayed it. Every time it told us to do something, we did it. And by doing that, we took all these steps. And if you're new to Alcoholics Anonymous and you hear bad news about the 4-step and how people go out before the 4-step a lot, or in the middle of it a lot, I want you to know that there's no bad news in the 4-step. Where in 1, I realize I can't drink and I can't not drink, and no matter what, I can't manage my life today. And 2, if you don't believe in God or have trouble with God, the secular version of 2 is just I can't do it alone. I can't do it alone. And if you take all these steps, that secular version will turn into a spiritual version, because the 12 steps guarantee us that we get to start to have a spiritual experience by step 5, and have a spiritual awakening by step 12. And step 3 is for the agnostic or the atheist, the person who's troubled by God, a decision to take the rest of the steps. And that, when I first heard that from my dear friend Jason Smith, who passed away in 2010 at 19 years sober, he put his arm around my shoulder and gave me, the version where that I could hear, just like I gave it to you. I was like, Jason, I hear the word all God all over the place. I know there's the abandonment of my will and my life, my thoughts and my actions. Is like, no. All I have to worry about is just taking the next step the way your sponsor tells you to. And he was channeling his sponsor, Johnny H., the founder of my home group, founded in 1972. And Johnny was fond of paraphrasing his papa, Chuck Chamberlain, who I never had a chance to meet, but who I've met through so many of you and through Johnny and through others. And Johnny would say, the 12 steps exist to empty me of me, so I could automatically fill up with power, which we happen to call God. And then in 4, my experience of 4 is just the same as what my late second sponsor, Rachel Lara, who passed away in 2010, also at 33 years sober, she was carrying to me the message that her sponsor, Mark Houston, who died at 29 years sober, that same year, it was a tough year for me. carry to her, which is that if you tell a kid, go clean your room, that kid isn't going to want to do it. They're going to do it real slow. But if you tell a kid, hey, go get everything that's broken, get all the toys that you've grown out of, that you're tired of, get all the things that all the toys and games that there's a new version of, and you want to get the new version, you bring it all down here. Here, fill up these hefty bags. And that kid is bam up there, filling up those bags, cleaning up the room, coming down and going, all right, I'm ready to go to the toy store. That's my experience of step 4. That I wrote a thorough inventory over the course of 7 days. I wasn't working at the time, so I had the time trust. And then by the time I was done, the big book tells me to waste no time. So I call my sponsor within 72 hours. I'm telling him everything that was on there. And at the end of it, he says to me, what are you leaving out? What are the things that you're going to take to your grave, that you're planning to take to your grave, that are going to kill you, that are going to take you out and have you drink? I'm like, oh, damn it. And I surrender again. I tell him the 3 things that I wasn't going to tell anyone. And he gives me the AA cure. He says, oh, me too, buddy. Is that it? Okay, great. So now go home and do what it says on page 75. And so I take a quiet hour. I become willing to have my defects of character removed. I ask God to remove them. And then he launches me in turn that 5th step list into an 8 step list and starting to make amends. And one of the first amends was to my parents. And it started out fairly standard, with me saying, I've created an appointment, sitting down with them, telling them that I behaved in ways that are so harmful to them, that I regret my behavior, that I wish I could have been a better son. And here are the ways, in a general way, that I've harmed them. And I asked them, is there anything else? And they're like, no, you covered it. And I asked them, what can I do to make things right? And they just said, we just want you to be happy. We just want you to be responsible. We just want to know that we just don't want to not have to worry about you. And it was very clear to me, because of my home group and people in my home group telling me things like that, the direct amends, the announcement that I make, just like I did with my parents. It's just the announcement of the behavior change that started on my sobriety date, continued all the way through the steps, and will continue afterwards. And what that started was a relationship with my parents, where I started calling my mom weekly. And then when my dad, and I got to have this relationship with both of my parents, and their experience was they got to have the Hiroshi, which is my full name. They got to have the Hiroshi that they were trying to raise. And because they raised me right. And I could finally start behaving the way that they had taught me. And I'm so grateful. And they ended up just falling in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. And in the fall of 2018, my father fell on a trip to Japan. By December, he couldn't stand up. Now, this is a man who beat cancer 3 times. And by January, it turned out that what we started to realize, we realize it a few months in, was that he was going through childhood development, what Stephen's experiencing with his young one, backwards. He started losing gross motor control. He lost his ability to walk, to stand, to walk, to sit up on his own. By January, he was put into a skilled nursing facility, and he started to really decline. And I got very terrified, because all of a sudden, just like on that day that my wife confronted me, and I was on the phone with Mary, and she tells me she's an alcoholic, I'm confronted with being and non-being. Except in this case, I'm confronted with grief. I'm confronted with the end of my father's life. I've never seen him this frail, and he starts losing his fine motor control. He can't feed himself, and except by holding a bowl, he can no longer use the chopsticks anymore. And he starts losing his cognitive skills, and for immigrants, he loses his English, and he maintains his Japanese. And in the evenings when I would visit him, sometimes he would forget his English, and so thankfully I'd been going since month number 1 to the Japanese speaking meeting, which has been the only Japanese speaking meeting in all of North America and even Hawaii until COVID, really. And because I've been going there, I can pitch in Japanese for 10 minutes as fast as I pitch in English. And so as a result of that, I'm talking to old timers who are telling me, go and sit by his side, tell him stories of your gratitude, tell him memories that you're grateful for. He might seem unconscious, and I'm able to do it in Japanese, and he might seem unconscious, he might seem asleep, he might seem out of it, but honey, he can hear you, and you just tell him. And I'm doing that every week. And every Monday, I'm sitting in my home group of 300 people on a Monday night for our speaker meeting. And our 2 10-minute speakers, I hold my stuff together for the greeting line, for saying hello to people, welcoming the newcomers. I hold everything together, and I'm telling people how happy I am to see them. And the 2 10-minute speakers, they go on, and we have our little coffee break, which has no coffee. I have no words. I'm just telling you. And then the main speaker comes on, and they might say something like, "Hi, I'm Glenn. I'm an alcoholic." And at that moment, it's kind of like how the waterworks broke when Mary said, "Hiro, I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been sober for 22 years. Maybe you need a meeting." As soon as that happens, I'm sobbing in my chair. I'm sobbing in my chair. And I'm convulsing. I'm trying to be quiet because I'm in the front row, and I'm trying to quiet quietly. And I've got hands touching me from all over. And it's kind of like an orgy. I have no idea who's touching me, but it feels really good, minus the sex, of course. And I'm sobbing, and I'm crying my eyes out. And every Monday night, I know that I can cry. And I'm talking to Johnny, and I'm calling him up, and I'm going, "I can't stop crying," in the home group. And he says, "Kid, if you can't cry in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, you can't cry anywhere. You're welcome here. You do exactly what you need to do." And showed up for my mom and called her every day, and called her every day since. And my father passed away on April 18th of 2019. And that weeping would happen every Monday for a couple of months later, and it started to subside. And then what happened was this past October, on October 25th, 18 months and 1 week to the day that my father died. My mother passed away in her sleep. And I'm a mama's boy. And so that just devastated me. And I'm the kind of guy where I have no idea. I have no idea what happens before we're born, what happens after we die. If you asked me, one day I might say, of course I believe in God, because it's too complicated to answer. But the bottom line is, I have no idea what God is. I have no understanding of God. I just know that God exists. And how do I know? I've seen miracles happen in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been able to care about people that I don't even care about. And it's by caring about people that I don't even care about, I'm able to care about people that I deeply care about. Because what happens when I care about people that I don't care about, I start caring about them unknowingly. And then what happens is that when I start not caring about the people's behaviors that I do care about, I'm able to care for them regardless, because I practice in AA. When my mom passed away once again, every Monday night on Zoom this time, I am just falling apart. I'm keeping my camera on. I want to turn it off. I keep it on because I want people to know that you can fall apart in Alcoholics Anonymous. You can fall completely apart, and you don't have to drink. And my experience of this now is that even though I have no idea where my parents are, which that sentence might not even make linguistic sense, I can feel them here. And I learned in AA that it's our experience, not our thinking, that's important in AA. It's our experience, and where that leads our thinking, and the experience of sobriety, and the experience of my parents' love, and your experience now. If there's anything in my talk that has moved you, it's because of the experience of so many other alcoholics and Alcoholics Anonymous, all the way to all these folks that aren't even alive today, all the way back to Bill and Bob, and my parents, and their parents before them, and their parents before them that I never met, and their parents before them, and all the way down here, living in me, carrying that message to you. Because if there's anything good that you hear in me, it's as a result of the good people in AA, and my parents, and my family, and those that have loved and nurtured and cared for me. And all of them live here, regardless of whether they live on earth or not. And that's my current experience. And what I get to do is I get to carry that message of hope to you. And I get to have my life, and I get to move and live and have my being in you, in the same way that my parents and my family and Chuck Chamberlain and Norm Alpe and Bill and Bob themselves get to live and move in me, and I in them. And that's my definition of serenity in the midst of calamity. And also my definition of joy and reassurance throughout all time. Thank you.